So how do y'all want to start this? We've had some email-in questions. I'm sure we'll have some chat questions that will come through. Let's start with y'all. Y'all have questions we can get started on?
New construction, because it's rapidly going up prices because of the price it costs to build. So how are y'all keeping up with that? I mean, you even see 6 months ago, you know, the lumber prices and all have just gone up. So I've just done a new construction, and he said, you know, if it doesn't appraise, sorry, you're gonna have to pay that.
Right.
And it did appraise, thank goodness. But I thought there was definitely a chance that it might not.
Now, I've actually posted a couple things on my Facebook page about the rising lumber cost. It's unimaginable where we are from where we were last year. And we were actually talking about this while we were eating before you guys got here. We're both realtors, so we're very, very well aware of all of that. And I would say this is I'm actually also on the state appraisal board, and we had the Home Builders Association that came to our appraisal board and asked us to address this issue, and that we needed to figure out something with the appraisals. And the bottom line is this: we actually do a cost approach in our appraisals if we think it's credible and needed for that appraisal report. The problem is the lender won't lend on the cost approach. They will only lend on what somebody will pay for that house. So i.e. Someone else has already come in and paid that price for that house or something similar to it. So it's not really us keeping up with it necessarily. It's because we keep up with it on the cost approach. So often you'll see the cost approach on our appraisal may even be 25% above what the market value is on the appraisal, which is a different number. And that's kind of where we are. So until we can get the banks and Fannie Mae and FHA and VA, all of those people take that into consideration, then I think you're always going to have that problem.
And they're not going to take that into consideration. They're not going to. And y'all, just so you know, the appraisal, y'all, the appraisal dictates way loan structure. So it doesn't dictate what somebody can pay for property. And that's what we're seeing. Prices increasing. And in some cases, with construction houses, they aren't paying above the appraised value. And so then that sets the bar. That will start. One sale doesn't make a market, but if you start seeing 2 or 3 of those, then it becomes a trend. Then we have something to hang on.
A lot of you builders now are actually putting that verbiage in. I know Pintail does it. I just did a pre-sale or construction deal on pre-sale down in Takeon that was astronomical. And in both of those, all the Pintail contracts, the one I did, it just said the appraisal is irrelevant. This is what you're going to pay for the house, and that's basically how they structure it. And you know, our most recent comps reflect price from 9 months ago, so it's kind of hard for us to take those recent sales. Even our most recent sales, because both are typically costs from 9 months ago. Look how much lumber's gone up 9 months, and then so that's how these builders are compensated for. They're just putting in there, here's the price. You don't like it, go out.
And when I started my search, especially with construction houses, I'm doing over everything right now. When I started searching for areas, I'm starting at 4 months back. I only want to look at sales that have taken place in the past 4 months. So I'm trying to avoid sales that took place, especially in construction prior to construction cost increasing and such as that. So we're just trying to get the most recent sales data we have and give us the best sales, even if they're not in that little pocket or subdivision. I'm having to go into competing surrounding subdivisions that have similar quality homes and similar size homes, and I'll do that. Sometimes we get sales sent to us that are from different subdivisions, and not only are they from different subdivisions, they're also different quality homes. We go in just about all of these new subdivisions, and we know the difference between one builder's quality and another builder's quality. And so everybody wants to reach and go out and get that highest price per foot comp over in such and such subdivision. Well, there's usually a reason that that subdivision is demanding such a higher price.
How far can you go behind the house?
Within your market area. Within your market area. And there are several factors that may drive the market area. Y'all know as well as I do, school districts here drive market areas. There is no distance. There is no distance limitation.
They like it.
They
Fannie Mae, FHA, yeah, they like it to be 10 miles, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, depending on if it's a rural property. That's not going to happen. Your next door neighbor may be 3 miles down the road, right? So that's not going to help. But for instance, I did one for a well-known broker here in town, and they were very upset with me because we had a house in Whitehaven, and they couldn't understand why I wouldn't go to East Memphis, and that's the comps. And I'm sorry, that's just not the same animal. It's just not the same animal. So like areas, so if I'm in Lewisburg School District, you know, I'm not going to go to say Horn Lake to get a call.
Right, or vice versa.
Now, with that said, there could be any reason that might still happen. You could have some A-frame mud adobe hut in the Lewisburg School District, and that's what's going to drive that is it's an A-frame mud adobe hut that nobody wants to buy. So maybe I will go to Horn Lake and use that one comp because it's the only house that's as ugly as this house.
Right.
But generally speaking, that's what's going to happen.
But the same rule is also true on the higher quality of the house. So if you've got a $1 million house, like Neil did something similar not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken, you got a high dollar house, let's be honest, that person doesn't really care what school district they live in, they're going to find out how to get to that desirable school district. Does that make sense? So if I'm in Oxford doing a big house, I can search the north part of the state. And when I say big house, I'm talking $3, $4, $5, $6 million house. That market, like Bill was saying, the market drives your distance. That market is expanded out. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right, we have a couple of ones in the Zoom chat here. First question says, please ask, when they look up comps in the MLS, how much consideration do they give listings when the source of the square footage is listed as the assessor?
Who wants to take that? I don't like that.
I don't look, to be quite honest with you, unless I know. I get on the phone. That's why we really appreciate agents putting who the appraiser is and accurately putting that in there. Because I pick up the phone and I call them or I shoot them an email. Is that assessor stuff? I've had some as much as 2,000 square feet off.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And that hurts you. Just FYI, you think that helps you. It may help you on this one sale. I'm not really sure how that happens because my brother's a very good person. He's better than I am. He gets very upset when he'll go out and do an appraisal on a house and it's 2,000 square feet and it was listed as 1,200 in the MLS. But the reverse is also true. So the problem is if you have overstated the square footage in the MLS, probably what's happened is before you closed that sale, it got rectified by the appraiser. So maybe it didn't appraise for what your contract price was. But the problem is now that shows as a sale in the MLS, and you're saying it was 2,000 square feet when it was really 1,500, and it only sold for $150,000. Well, that's bringing the prices back down for everybody else. So you're not helping yourself. So I would say if nothing else, when you get that final appraisal, go in there and fix that square footage and fix it so that we know that it's correct, so that we can use that.
Right. Just food for thought too. Never, ever, 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 ever use the adjusted square footage from the assessor. Ever.
Yeah, and they will tell you that. They will tell you.
Yeah, and that's a totally different animal.
Because it could be porches, garages, carports, it could be anything that includes it.
So if it's a one-story house and the sole listing shows that it has tax assessor square footage, and if I pull up the tax assessor information, which we're going to verify what's on that listing. You say tax assessor, you'd be shocked how many times it shows tax assessor and source. I'll pull up the tax assessor and it's totally different.
Right.
So if it's a 1-story home and with nothing on the second level, and it should be the base area on the tax assessor should be relatively close. It may not be completely accurate because they don't go inside. The garage door is down. When they go out to measure that house, they're estimating the garage. And, yeah, so that's really the only time I'll even consider tax assessor information. I try not to use it at all. We have the appraiser name down there, and we email and call back and forth trying to verify all this information. Y'all put good accurate information, even after the sale closes. You can go back and put appraiser square footage. Or if you change it on the listing, you can put it in the sales concession section. Anywhere to put it on there, just note that appraiser square footage was 1503. That helps tremendously because these appraisals, I'm sure y'all get under time crunches with them just like we do. And a lot of us, well, we're having to verify information. These phone calls, emails take time. What else you got, Tom?
All right, we got a few more questions. The next question says, if two houses have the same square footage, but one has 1 bath and the other house has 2 baths, how does the additional bathroom affect the overall appraisal?
That also depends on the market. So if it's a house, a little house over in, say, DeSoto Village, you might be talking $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. But if you're talking about the $1 million house, and look, if you're talking about the difference between the 7th and 8th bathroom, it may be nothing. Because who cares that you've got 8 baths in a 4-bedroom house? You know, at some point the market is what's going to tell you that what's going to work. But I mean, if you're talking over in Lewisburg at say Hawks Crossing, that may be $8,000 or so. But it depends on the house and the area, so it's not always going to be the same number, or it shouldn't always be the same number.
But between a 1 and 2, there's usually always some difference. Just depends on that particular market area.
Yeah, actually, I would tell you the National Association of Realtors, back when I was president of the board, I think that was in maybe 2011 or somewhere around then, actually did a study on the difference between houses with 1 bathroom and 2 bathrooms. And they said it was a bigger leap between 1 and 2 than it was between 2 and 3. And that's because, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I have rental houses, and I know that 1 bathrooms are just not as desirable. You know, they used to be fine. But I have a lot of rental houses that are 1 bathroom, and these people have terrible credit. They don't have any money, but they'll tell me they could not possibly live with, you know, 1 bathroom. And I'm thinking, you have money, you can live with whatever you get. But that is not true. So I have a much more difficult time renting those than I do a 2-bath. So I would say it's probably a significant difference.
My first house I owned had a bath and a half. We had 3 children while we were there, and that second full bath would have been worth a lot of money. we were crammed in looking for trying to get baths, and so yeah, so it all depends on just the area and location has a lot to do.
And we laugh because we said depends. So you said that before we started, and you're right. Everything depends. It depends on the house. It depends on the market. It depends on the participants in that market. So that's
Another one, Tommy?
Yes, sir. Hang on, make sure I'm not skipping anybody here. Okay. If a property has been flipped within a year but longer than 90 days, is a second appraisal required? And can the lender charge the buyer for the second or third appraisal, with the first appraisal being done by the seller when they bought the property before they made the improvements to resell? It was a longer question.
So the first appraisal that the seller had when they bought the property may or may not have anything to do with the next appraisal, and for a variety of reasons. If it's been rehab, I think you said, so that would probably not be appropriate to use that same one depending upon the level of rehab, what you said. And then another reason is every lender has to be able to prove that appraisal was ordered correctly. And by correctly, I mean, they didn't call you up and say, hey, you're my buddy, you're my pal, I'm gonna need you to get the sale price on this. And really the only way they can do that is if they go through other big banks like Trustmark or whoever you're gonna use. So that may be another reason that they can't use that appraisals, because they can't prove that it was ordered in the right.
And that 90-day rule, I know HUD has a rule that the contract can't be written on a flip till the 91st day. But I'm not sure that if there are exceptions and there are 2 appraisals required, then the buyer may have to pay for both. So I'm just not sure on I'm not sure on Fannie Mae's guidelines. That's more of a
I know
lender.
FHA said they used to not charge the person for the second appraisal, but that could have changed.
Right,
That could very well
right.
have changed. And Fannie Mae, I'm not sure about either.
Yeah, but on all your flips, just note that the contract, according to HUD guidelines, cannot be written on it until the 91st day from the date that investor purchased it. So basically, if you're buying one and you think it's going to sell FHA, know that you're going to have 90, you're going to basically have 40 months.
Okay.
That felt like a test question.
Right?
A lot of that were questions for lenders.
I'm about to say that's a
Yeah,
mortgage
that's more of a
question.
mortgage question, and that may vary from one lender to another depending on their particular guidelines.
And, and just for reference, just 1 or 2 people have said something, but could y'all maybe not yell at me, because I might be sad if you do that, but increase the volume just slightly.
Yes.
When you talk. Perfect. Okay, there was another one here. Let's see. Do you take into consideration the number of offers received on a listing? If so, do the terms of those offers matter?
Neil,
What do you think?
Neil's gone quiet down there.
I mean, it helps. It gives us some ammunition, so to speak, to where we can go back up. That way an underwriter's reading the report. If you analyze your contracts correctly, you go in there and say, well, let's list it for this. We had 12 offers within 2 hours. That shows high demand for the property. That explains why it sold for $10,000, $15,000 above list price. That helps that we can explain that. And because anytime in the old days, when you would appraise a property for more than it was listed for, or a property sold for more than it was listed for, you could 9.9 times out of 10, you're getting a call back from the underwriter. Why? So if you can go ahead and handle that on the front end, I like to put all that in my reports. I don't know about you.
Agreed.
I do.
Yes.
I make a lot of phone calls, especially when I go to schedule the appraisal appointment. I look, it's on the market one day. I see highest and best, and the agent notes you by such and such date. I'm going to ask you, how many offers do you have? And that helps me. I'm going to put that in the report. The listing agent indicated we had 10 offers within a 24-hour period. Now, what that does, I think the way the reader of that report looks at it, the underwriter, they probably look at it and say, wow, 10 offers in 24 hours, that's pretty strong. And so that does give us a little rationale and reasoning to go back and use those strongest sales we can find. Because y'all, the appraisal is not typically, in a typical market, the appraisal is not the highest possible price on a property. Our definition of market value says it's the most probable price. Well, right now, I think we all know that's probably pretty close to one and the same, and sometimes not. It's you can't even grasp. When we're having a hard time keeping a grasp on that, where they're at. When you got people offering $15,000, $20,000 above list price. So I will say the majority of the time, I see the listing agents are still pricing homes pretty close to what they're at the very tip top of what they're worth.
All right. This question says, does it affect appraisal or appraiser's opinion when buyers are putting in 5,000 above appraisal? And 5,000 above appraisal is in quotations. So
we know what they're doing. They're offering, in case it doesn't appraise for the contract price that they offered, which is typically well above list price, what they're saying is they're willing to pay $5,000 above the appraisal if it, up to their offer price if it doesn't appraise for contract price. So really on us, the way we look at it, it has no impact. That's a great thing for the market. At the end of the day, when that house closes, that's what drives prices, and that's what we said in the beginning. That's a good thing for our market to run prices up. It's people willing to pay above the appraised value. That's an open market and working at its best, I think.
So that will increase the value of the price of the house.
If it continues, that's right. That's right. We've got a couple of email questions. Yes, ma'am.
Do you see for sale by owners really overpricing right now?
Some, and
I've seen some underpricing.
I've seen some. We've seen both ways.
Because Amy, you just actually did one for me that was our 22 under.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we offered, he was asking like 240, we offered 242, and
It's funny, appraisers, we've had talks about how, that we've all had some, even personally, I've sold houses that didn't appraise, as a broker. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it. And you have to keep in mind, what we're saying is, this is what we can prove. This is
right, and I
this
didn't disagree with your.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm just trying to get my buyer a house, and I knew it was probably, a slim chance.
Y'all probably do it like when I take a buyer in to one, look, y'all let's offer whatever you want to. We'll take an offer, and we're going to be back to negotiating when their project comes in.
Right.
I actually put that verbiage in my report that many, I know one's going to be like, the contract is ridiculously high over market value. I'll put that in my report as part of my contract analysis. I'll do it. Agents are often telling people to offer higher prices because of other prices to substitute, just to secure.
They're negotiating.
Yeah.
Right, because then they get to go back and be the first one to negotiate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
so, I mean, I've got one I'm showing this afternoon, and I know they've already got a full price offer, cash, no contingencies. And so I've told them, I said, you're gonna have to go in way above that. Now, whether it'll price or not, I don't know. I have to look at that. Yeah. As a broker, not the issue.
Right. This is a nationwide problem. My little cousin just fled from South Haven. He's a cop in South Haven, moved to Detroit, and he had to pay $10,000 over appraised value in Detroit.
In Detroit, which you couldn't give stuff away in
Right.
Detroit a decade ago. I mean, they literally were giving away houses.
Right. Well, he's actually in Oakland County, which is a county just north of there, but he had to literally fight for a house. He had to pay 10 over.
But the FISBO things, you never know on pricing, because I see them get appraisal orders in on them where they're way high. And then, but I'm closing one tomorrow morning that people were asking less, and we offered way more and appraised at that.
Well, they just don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know. You ask them where they get their price. And
They're just throwing out a number.
Yeah, something they're comfortable with.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like sometimes we're all throwing out numbers. Sometimes it's hard. It's just hard to say, especially if it's in a subdivision and it's kind of a cookie cutter house like over in DeSoto Village. You have your range there. But if it's out in Nesbitt off of Highway 301 or something, and it's something odd, it's just no telling.
Okay, Tom.
That same agent just asked, I guess, to go along with it. So how do you account for 15 to 25% appreciation in some areas for the last 2 years or more when we do not have comps due to low inventory?
There's going to be a problem. I tell you what, we're running into problems with a lot of the for sale by owners that are not being handled with one side or the other with a realtor. Realtors, if y'all are taking buyers and selling them a FISBO, please put it in MLS. By signing that authorization to show unlisted property, they are giving you the permission to put that property in our MLS, and we need those sales.
Yep.
Y'all understand FISBOs are not public record. So it is going to be tough, because we can only work with what we have. I mean, we can't make it up. We can't come up with crazy numbers. We're having to work with the sales that we have out there.
Yeah, and if anyone is curious, like listening to the Zoom or anything, to do the FSBO, put it in. Like I said, you'll be the listing, and at first you'll be the listing and selling agent. Call us afterwards. We'll adjust it to a non-MLS member as the listing, and just so it's in there for comp purposes.
Right.
And I just want to throw this out there, and I say this every time I'm asked to speak, is that appraisers, we're not trying to make it come in low. We're not. And I'll tell you why, because if it comes in at sale price, I hand it off and I'm done, and I can go to the ball field with my, I don't have kids, but if I had a kid, I'd go to the ball field. But if it doesn't come into value or come into contract price or whatever you want to say, then I'm not only going to hear from both realtors, the mortgage company, the underwriter's going to call me, and maybe the buyer's mom. And so believe me, we get no joy out of that. And in fact, I think appraisers right now are stressed as anybody right now, because almost every appraiser I talk to are like, I'm just gonna, my brother put himself on vacation yesterday because he said, I cannot take this anymore. Yeah. And I said, well, I don't blame you. So, you know, after a while, you're doing what you can. There's only so much you can do. So
if I had a drinking addiction, I'd have a margarita instead of a bottle of water. I promise.
Exactly.
What is?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm representing the buyer of sale by owner right now. And we're taking her from the loan company out of Appraisal. So I emailed and I said, oh, we did get appraisal and sent it to the buyer. There's no key on the house. The seller was not contacted, so how did they give you a
They did a drive-by probably, or they did, so they're doing drive-by appraisals, which they wouldn't have to call you about, or they could be doing something called an AVM, an automated valuation model. And if your buyer has really strong credit and maybe they're not borrowing a lot of money, there's a variety of reasons why they do it, but they're getting those appraisal waivers now as well.
Is it an FHA loan or?
conventional?
Because I'm still seeing desktop and exterior code on FHA.
I was just surprised. I was getting close to closing time and I hadn't heard anything.
Right. Well, that's where it's so important to communicate with that lender. And that's where it's so important, especially on the FSBO. You're having to handle both sides of it and don't get paid for it. So
I just want to encourage you to use your local lenders, because as a broker, I think that's great, because I can reach out and touch that mortgage person. And when our buyers are using these lenders that are not local, it's a lot more difficult, and you don't really know what you're getting with them either.
This turned out to be a local
but they have an appraisal.
appraiser, but I just hadn't heard from them.
Yeah, and you're not typically not going to, if there's a contact number for the seller on there, they're gonna contact the seller. We won't
The
spend
seller
any.
didn't know either.
Really?
The only person who knew was the loan company and the buyer.
They're doing some waivers too now.
A lot of waivers, a lot of appraisal waivers.
I used to ask my buyers, when you get that appraisal, send me a copy so I can look at it. So, yeah.
Okay, I have a question. I have a place for some my house with a swimming.
Okay.
Just because. So my question is, if I do not find a house with a swimming pool and they, they fund, I know it's about $52,000, to build.
Right.
To make a swimming pool. So, how much value is that going to add to the house? I'm talking about a $350,000 house.
It depends.
And
It depends. And I'm not talking about my old man underwear.
okay.
It depends. So it depends on where it's located. It depends on what that market, what we can extract from the market as to what someone has paid for a home with a swimming pool. Cost is irrelevant.
Because what you're trying to determine is if the typical buyer, it's not somebody that wants to live next door to their mother, or somebody that must live in that exact house where Jerry Lee Lewis used to live, or whatever. If a typical buyer goes in, how much more are they going to pay because that has a swimming pool versus it not having a swimming pool? And you'd be really surprised. My ex-husband's an attorney, and he did not like swimming pools. We bought a house with a pool, and he wanted to fill it in. you wanted to, that's the only question he asked is how much did it cost to fill that thing in? Because it was, they're called an attractive nuisance. So not everybody wants a pool. So if in that area, the typical buyer wants a pool, they're gonna pay significantly more for that house. I guarantee you it won't be $52,000.
Right.
What was her question?
Oh, how much, pool, if she can't find a house with a pool, how much additional value is that pool going to add if they pay $52,000 to have one installed? Is that different?
Right. That's correct. You have to go into the market and extract those numbers. So basically, it's kind of like a Max Payer said, some high-tech ones like Neil figured out how to manipulate the computer to go in and add all this data in and spit out an
What's
answer.
the highest you've seen? The highest I've seen around here ever is about 25,000.
That's the most I've ever existed. Now, I did one the other, the one baby was talking about the other day, the $1 million.
Super nice one.
He had about 200 in that pool. And then I'm doing a final one Monday that had one of the Lucas Lagoons. You see that on what, Animal Planet or whatever? About 500 grand on a pool out here. And he got his feelings hurt, but it's, but 25 is about the highest.
Yeah, and usually I would say it's anywhere between 10 and 20 is what I usually say.
And I have seen zero.
Wow.
I have seen zero depending on the location.
Took more money to fix it.
Most of them, yeah. I mean, some locations, some neighborhoods, they don't want pools. Yes.
Yes.
Always stands
Always better,
Always better to buy an existing swimming pool. Yes.
as long as it works.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want problems, have it inspected, you know.
Yeah, because I always tell people, if you're gonna put a pool in, it needs to be for your enjoyment and that you're going to get that money out of it, enjoyment wise, watching your children or whoever, or you swim, if that's really what you want, but you don't put it necessarily in there to add value. And it's gonna add a little bit of value, generally speaking, but not near what you're gonna be out. Plus, I don't know if anybody knows, but I used to have a pool, they're very expensive to maintain.
That swimming pool is worse than buying a new car. But yeah, you know, if you drive that new car off the line, it loses value quick. Well, swimming pool is at least 50% more. You're welcome. Comment?
So far, no more, no questions yet.
Okay. Well, we have some emailed in questions. We'll run through those. If y'all have more questions, we'll be glad to take those. Amy, I've given you one.
Okay.
This is from Gay Young. And Gay asked, what are the parameters for choosing comps and adjustments, such as age, being built within how many years either way of the subject property, sold date within how many months of closing, size, what percentage of square footage of subject either way, distance, conditions. So this is one of those long questions. Also, are values going to be determined differently depending on the kind of loan? For example, VA versus conventional versus FHA or USDA.
Well, all right, let's start with sold date. I think we've talked about that a little bit already. So all of the people that we generally do appraisals for now, Fannie Mae, FHA, VA, they require us to use sales that have occurred in the last year. Now, if anything is over a year old, if we think it is an amazing comparable, we can add it as the fourth comparable, but one of the first three comparables in the report have to be within the last year. And I think Bill just said, though, that we're trying to use them as close to now as possible, because as we've all seen, the values are the trajectory. I was an economics major, so forgive me, but the trajectory of real estate is supposed to be more like this. And right now it's like this, right? And so we're seeing, so these houses that sold in December are not where we are today. And so the closer we can get to these houses, the more reliable it is as to what, because we're trying to determine today's market value. And you have to remember, the lender only is getting an appraisal because should something happen to you, you don't pay your bills, you get run over by a truck, whatever. If they have to take that property back, how much can they sell it for? And they want to know what could we sell it for today? And the closer we get to here is more reliable. Now, if we have to use a sale that happened down here in December, then sometimes we can make what we call a time adjustment. Time adjustments are difficult though, and not many people make them, and I'll tell you why. Because like everything else in the appraisal world, we have to have so much data to be able to prove it. Most of the time we don't have enough data. Because I can say in general, the market is going up in DeSoto County, but can I say it for this one specific house? Well, you have to have a plethora of data to show that, and most appraisers just aren't comfortable enough to do that.
And if Amy could prove a time adjustment, I can disprove it. And she could do the same.
No, it's true. It's true. That's absolutely true. So, but that's the deals. We try to use those. As far as, I did love you. So as far as distance, I think we talked about that too. They like to see them within a mile, but if you were in, rural Tate County, your nearest neighbor may be more than a mile away. So it just has to do with the market. It really has to do with the market. Size, what percentage of square footage? Typically speaking, they used to have this thing that was like a 10% adjustment. So they didn't want you to adjust. If your house was so much bigger that that specific adjustment was going to be in excess of 10% of the sale price, that really made them nervous. They don't really require that anymore because they decided that really wasn't, it was more of a suggestion. So the further, if you get something a lot bigger or a lot smaller, it's not really as like that house as we would like it to be. So the closer we can get, the better off we are. Now, there is no specific number.
No.
I mean, it could be 5,000 square feet bigger, but once you get differences that big, they're probably not very good comps. Anybody want to add anything to that?
I would say, and on the, what our job is to drive comparable sales, not just sales. So we're trying to get properties that would replicate that property we're appraising. So we're looking for those same type properties. We're not looking to target a value and, oh, we've got a 2,000 square foot house here that we're appraising. Well, there's a 3,000 square foot house 3 streets over that's sold. That's not really comparable, y'all. You know the market. People that are looking for a 2,000 square foot house, they're not looking at that 3,000 foot house usually. They've got a budget and have to be in that square footage range. So we're looking at somewhat comparable properties. So if I've got a 3,000 square foot house, I may look 2,600 to 3,400, somewhere in there. But those margins shrink as the house gets smaller.
One other thing, they actually asked about condition, and this is one way that, so I also do investigations on other appraisers for states, the feds, several different groups of people. And that's one of the best ways that appraisers manipulate values to where they should be. Condition and quality. They'll have a house that is builder grade, everything from mica countertops, nothing's been updated in the last 20 years, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll compare it to a brand new house with real hardwood all through the house, granite countertops, and even in the bathrooms, tile surrounds in the bathtub instead of the vinyl. And they'll compare that and they won't make any adjustments. Now, again, if your market doesn't make an adjustment, that's okay. But typically speaking, around here, our people are going to make an adjustment for that. So you've really got to be really careful that the house has the same kind of quality and the same kind of condition. And that's not always going to be the case, but if I can find houses, say over in Magnolia Estates over by my office and on Branch, you know, those are all cookie cutter houses, but some people have really gone in and outdone themselves and put the granite in there, the stainless appliances. I try to find a house that has something similar so that I can show this person paid $3,000 extra because, and all we can figure out is it's the same square footage, it's the same car storage, same everything, and this is the only difference that we can figure. So that, and that's where we get the adjustments, just so you know. We try to take more than two, but we start out with 2 houses that are, everything is the same except for one has a garage and one doesn't. And how much more did this person pay on this house with the garage versus the one that didn't? So that's how we make those adjustments. And it has to be not just one house, not just two houses, but we have to have, I teach a statistics class. You have to have a large enough data set to be able to say this is a typical thing, not just a one-off.
Part two.
Oh, part two. Are values going to be determined differently depending on loan, VA, conventional, FHA, USDA? I can't speak to VA. Do you do VA? Do you want to speak to VA?
Well, and I say all these different type loans and GSEs, it depends on their guidelines. Then they all do have different guidelines. As far as the valuation, I don't really see that there's any difference in the way the property is valued. I value the property the same way no matter what it is. I may have different requirements in that appraisal for repairs, conventional versus FHA. Conventionally, you can appraise it at a lesser condition, which may change the valuation on it. I may be able to appraise a house for a conventional loan in as-is condition, depending on who the bank or the mortgage company is. Even them, some individual mortgage companies have overlays that dictate repair requirements. So, but other than that, VA, FHA, USDA all have pretty much similar type repair requirements. And so all those valuations should be the same.
Do you want to address Tidewater though with VA?
Okay, y'all, Tidewater. Tidewater, if y'all, any of y'all ever had a mortgage company come back and say the appraisal's in Tidewater? Y'all ever heard of that?
This is strictly VA.
This is only VA. So if you get a call from a mortgage company and they tell you the appraisal's at Tidewater, that is basically a notice to you that the appraisal is coming in less than contract price. That's a VA requirement only. We do that for a 48-hour period that sales can be provided back to the lender. There's a proper channel for everything. So the agent will send them to the lender. The lender will forward them back to us. They have a specific format. They have a form, a gridded form, kind of like an appraisal form. They have to be put on. But you have 48 hours to submit sales that you want to consider. And sometimes you may know. I mean, y'all may be in a subdivision with new homes, and there may be a house that's sold that we didn't have that was not put in the MLS. So we do sometimes get sales on those that we didn't have access to. But that's the Tidewater procedure. Then we have to take the sales that are presented back to us and address them in the report for VA. Yes, ma'am.
I've heard that VA, you have a better chance of appraising out for VA loan if there's land associated with the house.
Well, the thing with VA, they really, FHA and some Fannie Mae loans, they get kind of hung up on the amount of land that's there. VA, it just needs to be kind of common and typical for the area. And you have to be able to demonstrate that through the sales you're using. So if you've got a house, I just did one in Tate County that was on 35 acres. And so I had sales in Tate County on large tracts, tracts of ground anywhere from 20 to 60 acres. And so VA really doesn't get hung up on that. So that they're a little more lenient, I guess, in that aspect than HUD and Fannie Mae.
Fannie's 30%. They like you to do the land value not to exceed 30% of the total price of the property. That creates issues. The HUD's real big on excess and surplus land. So if you got surplus land, if you have excess land, and you don't include the excess land in the appraisal.
So do you recommend if you have a house and it has like 10, 15 acres, doing the house with 2 acres and listing the other separate?
You may, but it has to be surveyed. You have to have a legal description.
Yeah, it has to be legally separate.
And you can separate it at closing as long as we have a good legal description. Use when we appraise it. Yeah, It may be, it may, net your solar more that way, depending on how it's laid out. Okay, let's move to the next one. Bailey. Ask appraiser, what steps can be taken if appraiser gets the square footage wrong and if the appraiser misses a comparable that would have supported the value?
So,
Mismeasure houses, Bailey?
so I will say what, I'll say what Kelly said a second ago. If somebody called me and says, hey, you missed this, or you didn't see this, I'm not gonna stick my head in the ground and pretend I'm an ostrich and didn't hear your concern. I'm not perfect. Like Kelly said earlier, nobody's perfect. I've mismeasured stuff before. Typically when that happens, if I'm off and an agent says, hey, you're a little off, I'll go back out. I've remeasured a house twice. I measured the original time, I went out one more time, and then I even went out again when I took somebody with me and said, hey, this says 12 feet, right? I mean, so if somebody would call and say, hey, you got this wrong, the first question I'm going to ask you, well, where'd you get the other one from? And if they said, we got it from the tax assessor, I'm not going to put a whole lot of weight into that. If they say, hey, well, we had an old appraisal, well, you want to send me that old appraisal, I'll look at it. If I see something is off for my numbers, I will give a courtesy and just go back out. Well, I mean, I think most appraisers will give a courtesy and go back out. So I'm gonna redo that. Now, if there's another comp to ask the second question, says if the appraiser misses a comparable that would have supported the value. One, let that come through the lender. Let that come through the lender's proper channels, and I'll look at it. Like I said, I'm not going to just stick my hand in the ground and say no, I'm right, and this is what I say, because as you know, an appraisal is an opinion of value based around facts. I mean, that's what it boils down to. And if there's something we miss, something I missed within the appraisal comparable standpoint, send it to that lender and let the lender channel that. Now the lender might just put a stop to it and say, no, we're not going to do it, and that so be it there. But I don't think many appraisers will just stick their head in the ground and not.
I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not either.
No.
Because it's not perfect. None of it's perfect, right? This isn't 2 + 2 = 4. This is an art to it. And so I'm going to be open-eared, open-minded if there is an issue that arises. Because one, I don't want them to call Andy down the board and say, oh, you got this appraiser up here. And then, but no, most appraisers are going to give the benefit of the doubt and at least reconsider and look at.
I mean, I've gone back out and remeasured.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not necessarily, and sometimes it is, they got to put the tax or that's what in their mind they thought it was.
Or even if it could have been the home builder, right? They could have used the home builder's plans.
And a lot of these plans, they're still building out the 4-foot deep walls, y'all. We're measuring an imaginary line of 5 feet. And if it's a 3-car garage with a long rec room over it, it's down to 4-foot deep walls, you're losing 60 square feet down through there. If it's 4-foot knee wall, we're measuring 5. So y'all understand that? Knee walls, the slope walls, and we don't go all the way down to where it ends at 4 feet. We're cutting it at a 5-foot height, and that's state law.
If you hadn't taken a class, Melissa Bond comes up here quite often. She teaches a class on gross living area. And if you haven't taken that course, just come in and sit on it. I think it's probably used for contingent education hours for realtors, isn't it? It's a 4-hour maybe course, but she teaches that every now and then up here. I would highly encourage you to take it because she teaches what appraisers are actually measuring, right? That's what we look at, the gross living area. When you hear appraisers say GLA, that's not necessarily heated and cool, but GLA, there's a difference between heated and cool and GLA. And I would highly encourage you to take that class.
And the other part of that on submitting additional sales, y'all, don't just submit an MLS number and address to your lender if you want that sale considered. I mean, have any of y'all ever appealed an appraisal, I wrote for a document and asked for a reconsideration? Any of y'all ever done that? So I won on 2. I haven't paid. I'm an appraiser. So, but on 2 of my listings where I knew, and I usually will not say anything, but if I know an appraiser is wrong, I'm fixing to write a book. And so I don't just send 2 MLS sheets in and say, hey, here they are, I want these. I'm gonna write you detailed paragraphs about why my sales should be considered over the sales that were included. Do that, take time. I've gone into the office and spent 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon writing an appeal. Just to stand ground for my client because I know I'm right. So
I mean, it's hard for us to argue with you if there's one in the same subdivision and you write us and you say, look, we upgraded to granite countertops. This one has granite countertops. We upgraded to this. This one also has that. Then we go, oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
and we may look over. And the other problem is the sale may have closed, but still shows pending in MLS. Or a week later, or the day after we do the appraisal, the agent decides to go in and close out the sale. We didn't have that.
We didn't have it now. I just want to say one other thing. I was also present with MLS here, and I will tell you, and I helped them develop the one in Memphis, and I will tell you inexplicably, I can do a search 7 times, and the same search, and the 8th time I do it, another comp will show up, and you're like, I have changed nothing, right? And we don't, and I'm forever emailing Amanda going, Amanda, on my MC form, it'll forever say there are 2 active listings, but when I switch back over and I try to pull up the 2 active listings, there'll be 1. I'm like, well, where's the other one? I said there were 2. And we don't know why that's happening. So just so you know, please send it to the appraiser. I mean, we want to be right. We would rather you guys tell us that we missed a sale than the board tell us we missed a sale.
Right.
That's why I'm not sticking my head in it.
Yeah, one more caveat to that, I just had this happen to me the other day is, a sale came back and I was given another sale and I was sitting there just racking my brains. Why did I miss this on my original search? And like Bill said, and Amy said at the beginning of the classes or the session is, you know, I do my searches off school district because it's so school district specific buyers, most of my searches. Well, this particular sale that I didn't catch on the original thing had a completely different school district in there. And so if it's not in there, if the data's not in there correctly, then, you know, a lot of times we may not find it. The reason, you know, so that's imperative to get, you know, I'm not saying that, but that literally just happened to me. They sent another sale to me and I was like, why did I miss it? And I looked up at the school district, it's a totally different school district.
Right. So we do a lot of searches about school districts. Y'all know how different Lewisburg, Fernando, and just Social Central compared to South Haven School District. There's differences.
Yeah, I mean, we do the same search as you guys do, or we should be. That, you know, when your buyer calls you and says, hey, I want to buy a house for this reason. And you know, we're not always privy as to what reason they want to buy a house. Maybe they want a pool. Maybe that's all they care about in life is that they buy a house that's got a pool.
Right. They don't care what school district.
Yeah, they don't care anything about school district. That's always helpful too.
What you got, Tom?
We got 3 new questions in the chat. This first one's a little longer one, but it says, as the foreclosure moratoriums lift and REOs begin to hit the market, how do you see those sales impacting appraisal values? Will you have to take those sales into consideration for a normal sales transaction, or will appraisers have to take foreclosures into consideration?
If it starts affecting the market as to what the typical buyer pays for a property, then we will start taking that into account.
Okay.
Right. It's basically how much does the foreclosure actually impact the normal sales going forward. We all know they've had this moratorium. Thank you for coming. I know you got to go. We know they've had this moratorium on now. It would be well over a year, probably 15 months if they lifted it at the end of June. And so there is a huge number of looming foreclosures out there. So there's a long as we don't get back to where we were at in 08 through 2010 or 11, where that's all we had. So at one point, all we could use were foreclosure sales or short sales. That's all we had for comps. So as long as it does not get back to that point, we'll still be trying to use normal sales and not include REO sales. But we all know it can hit a point where we have to. And typically the normal sales will already reflect any impact that the foreclosures were having on the entire market. Make sense? Okay. What else you got, Tom?
Next question. How much weight can you give to pending sales for comps, especially in new construction?
I'll tell you, I do include, a lot of times I'll include a pending sale, but we're not waiting. We're not waiting. It can't be, it's not closed until it closes. So y'all know how many of y'all had sales fall apart before closing.
To support. Yeah, to support your
We've been there.
Yeah. So we know that that is not a closed sale where we can hang our hat on until it closes. So pending sales, we do look at them. Actually, VA requires us to look at all competitive listings and pending sales. We have to note that in our VA approach that we reviewed those. I've got one right now that will have some pending sales in it just to show the price that we offered on this house is not realistic, because we still have pending sales out there that won't support what they've offered. One of those competitive situations, I'm sure. But so we do use pending sales, but we can't really weight them as far as our final number.
I think we got like 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to try and break this question down. How do you appraise or measure a 3-bedroom, 3-bath home? So 3-bedroom, bath, den, kitchen set up as a basement apartment and tenant, income with normal stairs to upstairs, and door in home leading upstairs to home, side entrance. So basically it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home with a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment downstairs on 5.8 acres.
Okay.
We're going to turn that one down. That's what's happening. We're turning that one down.
Before we get into a couple more of those, we've got a couple of emails that were sent in. Let's get those.
Yeah.
They were sent in well in advance. Neil, if a home appraises below the contract price and it's on an FHA loan where the seller elects not to move forward with the sale, does this appraisal affect future possible sales involving either VA or conventional loan like it does on a future FHA loan? Part 2, do appraisers only compare, appraisers only compare new home sales to new home sales, or do appraisers use new home sales as comps for resale sales?
I'm not sure about VA. They don't have access to the FHA connection stuff, do they?
No, FHA only impacts future FHA for 120 days.
So on that one, I'm going to say, you're probably safe unless it's the same lender. Then sometimes the same lender look at it and say, all right, well, it just appraised for X number of dollars as an FHA loan last week, and then how's it worth, how's there a $20,000 jump in appraised value on a conventional loan? So, I mean, that may cause some issues, but it's not, the appraisal doesn't stick. I'm assuming I've never seen it to stick. Now, as far as the second question on the appraisers only compare new home sales to new home sales, we do like to try, and as a matter of fact, a lot of lenders would like to see a resale of an existing home in there with that new house that you're appraising. Some actually require some lender specific guidelines.
They're trying to make sure that the new construction, what all are they adding into that? Are they adding in a fence? Are they adding in appliances? What all are they adding in? Plus, and I won't mention any names, but we did have a builder here. I'm trying to think of when that was, but anyway, they were actually finding out that the person owed $50,000 on their Capital One card, so they would roll that into the price of the house. So if you had only used their sales, then they were doing that on all of their sales. So it artificially raised the prices for their new construction versus what a buyer or a seller could have done. So if I'm selling my own house in that subdivision, I couldn't do the same thing. So that's why they really want us to have a resale to make sure that there's nothing funny going on with that.
I'll typically use, on a new house, I'll use same builder for a couple comps. I use a different builder for a couple comps and try my best to put a resale in there somewhere or another, just to kind of like to keep what she said. We all lived through that. I know exactly what you're talking about on that one. That whole neighborhood went belly up at one time. So, but
on the flip side, I think if you're appraising a 10-year-old house, typically you're not going to use new homes.
yeah, not unless it's just, let's just say, for instance, Tate County, you know, there aren't a lot of sales now. I think I did one yesterday. There's 19 sales built over after 2010 down there outside of the city of Saratoga. So you kind of you're really limited as to what you can use down there. So you may have to throw one in there as a fourth or fifth comp, and you comp that or new house sale. But I typically wouldn't use that as my number one comp or anything like that. So.
We're out of time, but I think we have one more rate.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got Jennifer Hill. Miss Jennifer at Fairway Mortgage has sent a question in. How does payment over the appraised value affect our appraisal of future sales using said home and the appraisal as a comp? We've kind of been over this. She also asked, is the 180, okay, for example, she says home sale contract 200. Client says we'll pay 10,000 over appraised value. Home appraises at 180. Is the 180 logged as the sale price in the MLS for the appraisers, or is 190 used? We all know that what it sells at is what it sells at. If your buyer paid 190,
if they paid an extra $100,000,
right, that's what you're going to put it in. So it's going to go in the MLS, whatever the final purchase price.
So it helps future sales.
Yeah, right, and it will. And then that's our next question is, what sale price is used for this comparable in future, and how does it affect value going forward? So if this happens over and over again, which is kind of what we've already talked about, if it happens over and over, becomes a trend, prices start increasing, and that's the reason we've been able to see such a dramatic increase in short periods of time. It's not because appraisals are going up, it's because people are paying above appraised value, and it's driving prices up.
I had one the other day, paid $25,000 cash over appraised value, and that sales at first stuck out like a sore thumb. Now it's starting to, everybody starting to creep up a little bit. Now it's pretty common now, that price per foot in that specific market.
I mean, it's just demand always, you know, if you got a big demand or low supply, it's going to go up. The opposite's also.
Okay, what else do y'all have? I'll stay as long as you need to. I've got to walk through.
I have one more quick question. It goes on the question before. So if you have a house listed, say in Hawks Crossing that's 2 years old, and you've got all those new comps, you're seeing people price it. You know, they're creeping up on their price to make it almost what the new ones are. How do y'all look at that?
And I would say a 2-year-old house, first of all, I'm going to go back and look. I'm going to search Lewisburg for homes that are 1 to 5 years old and see what I have as far as closed sales. And typically you'll find 1 or 2. They are asking almost what they're asking for new construction. And, you know, it's, we may, if it's a 2-year-old house, I may use a new construction home and deduct it on age and condition for the new. We all know a new home comes with a new home warranty. People are willing to pay more for a brand new home than they are somebody with a cat hair in the carpet. So that's always the case. So there's some depreciation off of a new home. So that existing home typically is not going to be, considered all other things equal, it's not going to be worth quite as much as that new home.
Well, you know, it didn't cost them as much.
No. Now, I will say this, I have seen exceptions in this crazy market right now with everything. Everybody knows where Cherry Hill's at off of Sweeney and Rascal. McBride and them were building brand new homes. So an existing home would pop up in there and one that someone could close on in 30 to 40 days. Well, the new construction homes, y'all know, were 4 months out from being able to close. I've seen people pay more for those little existing homes than what he was selling new homes for. because they can move in. So there are exceptions. None of this right now makes sense to a lot of us. Appraisers, I'm telling you, we're like y'all, we're looking at things wondering. I had a head full of hair not long ago. It's all coming out down here great. So, but we're trying to keep a grasp on this, and it's very difficult. So, but there are things happening that just don't fit the mold of what real estate is supposed to look like. It don't make sense at all. All right, what else y'all got to throw at us?
Thank y'all for coming. We appreciate
We
it.
appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. If y'all have questions, you know, we're not hard to find. Y'all can always call. I get
We have your phone number.
Yeah.
I know you call me.